Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. So today I will be analyzing the final game of Magnus Carlsen against Nodirberg Abdusattorov. The reason is that he is a world champion, and then we have to explain and see why. So first of all, Magnus Abdusattorov just drew with a perfect game and a very nice rook sacrifice against Magnus Carlsen. And as everyone already analyzed, as the game were going on, people were analyzing games after games after games. So I will have to analyze the final game because for me, it's the best game ever. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop to b5. It's basically a Spanish game, but Magnus Carlsen is the world's leading expert in the real Lopez. So a6, bishop to a4, knight to f6, d3, very classical way. We defend the e4 pawn. Eventually, Abdusattorov might go one day for some c3, d4 pushes. b5, bishop b3, bishop e7, and here he went for a4, which is basically some sort of an anti-martial. If he had gone, for example, castles, then eventually something that might eventually be happening here would be d5. Sorry, not here, but like let's just say rook e1. Yeah, this is something that is very common. c6 and bishop d6, and this is just known stuff. Very hard position to deal with. But basically, you know, a4, so it's an anti-martial. Rook to b8, ab, and it feels like, visually that white is just much better than black made a huge concession giving away the a file. It's just an impression, it's not a reality. In practice, we can't really do anything. Black's pieces are just way too strong on the a file for the moment, so the rook is basically useless. So knight to c3, castles, d6. Magnus is basically preparing to bring the pieces out. It was a very common position reached plenty of times in the match played by Magnus against Nepomniachtchi. In this position, by the way, h3 was played, h6, everything is fine. Bishop to e3, and here Magnus reacted in a very interesting way. He played rook to e8, knight e2, and Magnus made like a strange stare. Like he stared like, oh no, wait, this is wrong. I think he was prepared. In this position, he played bishop to f8, and after knight to g3, he played instantly bishop to e6. Sorry, bishop e6, captures, c3 and d5. This is the top engine line. He was still prepared. It was still the theory. This is great. This is why playing a lot of games is just great. And this is basically the way to go if you want to learn your openings. If you practice and play more, you just know more stuff out of experience, out of practice. And he just killed it. In this position, black is just much better. All right. Queen to c2. If he had captured after knight takes, no need to explain that this is just going to be a nightmare. Just black pieces are way too strong. And also, if you do not capture, I'm sorry, after queen c2, b4 was played, and this is just a nightmare. Now, of course, if there was a catch on e4, then nothing would happen. Now white is just much better. But of course, after queen c2, b4 was played, and now the real problem is that you can't do anything. If you capture, then I think d4, this, bishop b4, or knight b4, and this is just, I mean, you're going to lose. That's it. The b pawn is extremely weak, the rook is extremely strong. This is just extremely bad. You're, of course, never going to trade that because this is just going to lose on the spot. So instead, Magnus just played queen to c8 instantly. It was still clear in his mind. It's a top engine line, by the way. Queen to a4, Magnus is just much better. B takes c3, b takes c3. The rook is open. He went knight to e7. By the way, knight to e7 looks extremely weird. It feels like Magnus, basically when you have a position like that in classical, and also in blitz and always, you will just think, yeah, visually I'm just fine because visually I have more space, my pieces are better. But in chess, it's not a matter of visual things. It's a matter of forcing moves. It's a matter of how concrete your position is and how concretely are you going to improve your position. In this position, if you just capture on d5, which is the only logical move that you have, first of all, you're trading off your space advantage. These pieces are just going to be, extremely strong. I thought during the game about bishop to c5. It turns out, wait, I need the engine line now because I completely forgot about that. Yeah, exactly. So basically here it was just knight g6, captures, and I think it's king takes. Am I wrong? No, it's even queen takes. King takes is also fine. And basically, black pieces are just extremely strong now. You will never be able to push d4 because this is just going to be too weak. And second thing is that the black pieces can very easily join the game, and that's really it. So he went queen to a7, which is all right, slightly off, but all right. Knight to g6, improving the knight, of course. Rook to b1, preparing to trade the rooks off. And now takes. And if rook a6, the queen can always move back onto b5, so there isn't really much we can really add to this. Captures, rook to c6, And yeah, in the game when I saw that, I thought, all right, it's just fine. But what if rook b8? What if queen a8? It turns out the knight is extremely strong. But here, Abdusattorov will find a very strong continuation. He goes rook to b8, queen to e6, queen to a8, rook c3. He sacrificed the pawn and went knight to f5. But what is the threat of knight to a5? I will show it to you. It's just crazy. The threat is the following. Let's just say you go c5, for example. You push a pass pawn. Now I go knight h4. This is the idea Abdusattorov had in mind. This is a very strong hidden threat. If you capture on h4, which is forced, otherwise I'm just capturing, then I capture on f8, then I just capture right here, you move back, and now I go knight h4 and I'm threatening to mate you. And it's basically game over. And Abdusattorov wins the game. But he went knight d7. The only way to defend. Now he's defending absolutely everything. If you play knight h4, I don't care. I'm capturing the rook. So Magnus, so Abdusattorov went rook to e8, so Magnus just defended perfectly. Queen c6, trading the queens off. Captures. h4, he's trying to do something, chase the knight away. If the knight moves away, then there's always knight e7, which wins the rook. So h4 is threatening h5 and win. So he went rook to e6, but now rook to c8. And yeah, and the pawn is going to fall, and it feels like it's a draw. Knight f6, but be careful, the pawn here is hanging. But it's okay. He just went knight to e2, knight e7. And okay, now you have to capture the pawn, because if you just capture, then Magnus just captures back with the rook. And if bishop to c5, rook e8, and maybe this should be fine and holdable. I just have to check very quickly because it feels like it's not this. Yeah, bishop c5. Yeah, rook e8, exactly. Rook c7, and yeah, and this is just a draw, and you know, the game would be a draw, and they would just go on with yet another, another two games. But he went rook to c7, and the problem is that we are in an equal endgame where Abdusattorov has the worst pawn structure ever. Rook to e8. Rook to c6. The threat is to capture. Let's say you do nothing. I just capture, and now I want the pawn back, and now I'm even slightly better. I can plant my knight on e4. Okay, let me just show you something. Okay, you just go knight to e4, then pawn to f3, and the knight is just much stronger than the bishop in this position. Okay, so he went h5. Now if you go bishop h6, I do not capture it. Bishop g5, giving away the g5 square, so Abdusattorov just uses it. And now when the knight moves away, he wants to go knight to d5. But there is a problem. If you go knight to d5, like in the game, there is f6. The bishop moves away, and knight e7. And the pawn falls. And it's a 4 against 3, and it's a draw, but it's never going to be a draw, especially in blitz. Here, I remember, according to the engine, after f6, there was a line here. f6, bishop e3. Because now when you go knight to e7, I can go rook e6. Notice, he played bishop to d2. If the bishop was there, when the bishop was on d2, after rook c8 here, if the bishop was on d2, that would be rook d8. And you couldn't be able to go knight g3 because with the bishop there, black would have gone rook to d8. And now the rook would be, let's put it that way. Let's just say you go rook d8, yeah. If the bishop was on d2, in this position, knight g3 wouldn't be possible, and the rook would just capture the bishop. And this is what he missed. And this is why he's losing the pawn. And this was the only way to really hold a practical draw. Okay, rook a6. Yeah, now this is funny. If rook e6, rook d8, you don't have knight g3 to defend because you lose the pawn. And if you move the bishop away, then I just capture the pawn, and now I'm up a pawn, and I'm going to win this game as black. I mean, Magnus is going to. I'm not going to win this against him, but still. Knight f5, g3, defending the pawn. He has to. Rook f7, king f7, king g2, king g6, rook a4, and okay. And now he's just trying to hold his position as much as he can. They started trading a couple of pieces off. Now to be a very easy draw for Abdusattorov. It's very important for him to manage to trade the bishops off. Leave the rooks on the board. It's fine to have the bishops, but it's going to be extremely hard because the same color bishops with one pawn requires a very strong technique. King f5 was played, rook to a7 chasing the pawn. So g6, he just defends against the pawn. I'm sorry, defense against the threat. Rook a2, rook c4, rook d2. bishop b4. They just started to shuffle a lot. Rook c2, Satorov manages to pin the bishop. So king to e4, threatening king d3. So rook a2. He's just shuffling. Bishop d4. Now important, if you just capture, then there is just e takes d4 and black wins the game. So of course he went bishop to h6, not trading the pieces off because trading would now be completely losing. King d3. Magnus activates the king like a monster. Rook a3, rook c3, take, and now it's a draw. Bishop g7, e4, king f1, king d3. If you try to go get in, then I would just be pushing theirs. Bishop f6, bishop e5, and now there is one threat. The threat would be e3. If I go e3 and you capture with the pawn, I lose. But what about capturing with the bishop, would you ask me? Bishop c1, e3. The threat is e2, and you have to go king 1, then I go bishop c3. e2, king e1, bishop c3, and I win. Because if bishop d2, bishop takes and there is mate. But he captures with the bishop, but now there's bishop g3. And the problem is that if you capture back, Magnus captures the bishop on e3 and the game is over. So he went bishop to g5 with the intention that if you capture, I capture. But then he can at the very least just capture, and now this endgame is just completely winning here for Magnus. The problem is that, yeah, just double check just to make sure. But basically, there is a moment where you will just lose because of this opposition, and now the 2 pawns are going to win very easily. So after bishop to g5, in this position, Magnus captured, and Abdusatorov resigned. How did he win? He knew the opening better. He was more experienced. It means that he basically practiced his opening lines much more and a lot more than Abdusatorov, and it was enough to win the game. So the lesson is know your opening lines, calculate well, and play like Magnus Carlsen if you want to get better at chess. Thank you very much for today. See you in the future. Subscribe to the channel. This is very important. If you want to support me, support my work, support everything I'm doing as a coach, the chess world, I'm a nobody for the moment. But if one day I get to be someone, then this will be great, and you will be part of the family. Join the Discord, join everything. See you in the future. Take care.